At Braum's, we offer more than just burgers, shakes, and fries. We have an entire fresh market for your everyday grocery needs, from farm fresh milk to meats, freshly baked breads, and produce. We also carry a wide variety of our premium ice cream, frozen yogurt, and sherbet. And with Braum's delivery trucks running 7 days a week, our items are always fresh. Stop by your neighborhood Braum's Fresh Market for an incredibly fast, incredibly convenient grocery shopping experience so you can spend more time on things that matter most.
So our guest here today is Mark Kertenian, and Mark is entering his fourth year as a coach in the Dodgers organization. Before that, several years working as a coach in the college ranks. And Mark, the last 3 years, had been a manager, a couple years at rookie ball in the Arizona League in Ogden, and then last year at the high level in Rancho Cucamonga. All Mark's teams have done have just win, and win some more. In those 3 seasons, he won 2 league championships. Last year, even though Rancho Cucamonga fell a little bit short in the playoffs, they still had the best regular season record in the league. His teams have won over 62% of their games in his time as he's been a manager. But moving into a bit of a different role this season, will be the coach with us, coaching third base, also serving as a bench coach to manager Travis Barbary. And Mark will be joined by Travis Barbary once again, pitching coach Bill Seamus, hitting coach Manny Burris, and a bullpen coach, Justin DeFreitas as well. So Mark, kind enough to take some time out of his schedule today. He's at his off-season home in San Diego right now, either getting ready. I don't know. I should have asked you before. Either you just got done at the beach or you're about to do something at the beach once we're done here today.
Yeah, it's I'm in San Diego. I wish I wasn't. I wish I was in Oklahoma City with you guys. But my car has become my office, and it's mobile, so I get to go to some pretty cool spots and have conversations with Dodger personnel in relation to our players and what we're doing, but also in these awesome moments where I get to hang with you guys. And I just parked right by the water, so I apologize about the backdrop. It's not fancy, but looking at something pretty cool.
Well, you mind turning your phone around and giving everyone a look exactly of where you're at? Get a little look at the Pacific Ocean from their homes here in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, this is Bird Rock in La Jolla. It's a real panoramic view. You have Mission Beach and Pacific Beach off in the distance that way. Downtown San Diego would be that way. So it's one of my favorite places to be. This is actually a new little lookout that I found yesterday.
Okay.
On a bike ride. It's not my typical spot, but I'm really enjoying it.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, again, thank you so much for joining us here today. And let's just first discuss, you mentioned your mobile office in your car, but we were talking before we got started broadcasting here, I think both for you, for me, and probably a lot of folks who are joining us today, that things are different than they normally would be this time of year, but they're still pretty busy in a different fashion. So what's really a typical day like for you these days in a working capacity?
Yeah, really good question. There's quite a bit that we've done behind the scenes. The job shifted immediately with how we do things. I think that there's a general tone around baseball of like maintaining contact with the players and players keeping in shape and staying active. But as we are Dodgers, it doesn't just stay at that. I'm so impressed with the players and the staff for how they've connected on a deeper level, the sharing that's gone on, the educational pieces. Although it's not ideal, there's quite a bit of development taking place at all levels. And being with this group that we're all sharing in, the OKC players and the team, you guys would all be extremely proud of how they're going about this. Guys have different scenarios. Some might have a batting cage or a mound to work with, and others, they just have like a sheet and a tee, and we've shipped them out some baseballs, and just piecing it together. But these guys just constantly take it to another level and make the best of what they have. So we're starting to see the fruits of that labor right now, and they're not as far removed as people would think right now. I think that they've really pulled themselves ahead of the rest of the crowd in professional baseball that might be starving for ways to do things right now.
Yeah, and just talking with some guys myself, like you said, it's run the gamut. We had DJ Peters on before. He said he's fortunate to have access to a facility that he's used for several years now. But I've also heard guys like Edwin Rios, Matt Beatty, who are living together out in Arizona, are doing drills with dry pinto beans, and swinging at those to help with hand-eye coordination. So guys are certainly getting creative during this time to be able to keep their skills sharp. When you have these calls with players or maybe other coaches, and I'm not sure how much you can divulge, what's the main content of those conversations? Is it baseball related? Is it maybe just general check-ins to see how people are doing? What are you guys talking about mostly?
Oh, it evolves. It obviously starts off with those general check-ins, the nature of where we're at and how close we all are. You have to check in initially, but once you get to that point, Travis has really put together a beautiful program. Every time we meet, every time we chat, he brings in guest speakers. He's just really hitting us from all sides. The players themselves are participating on a high level. They're as fun as ever. They really bring the joy to it, and they crack us up, man. It's just, there's no other way to say it. They're engaged, and each time out, it's been a different type of theme or topic, but with some fundamentals in there, just checking in, giving them any updates that we have, any outlook that we have, just trying to keep them ready to get where they need to be in a hurry without having to pick up a lot of ground. So these guys, they've made it very easy for us. Travis has been extremely organized for us as our skipper, and the rest of the staff is just behind the scenes, just really getting it done with the guys on a one-on-one level and making sure that the learning and the work is relevant. And we just have such a professional group of players. It's not that big of a task, but you have to get creative and help some guys out creatively on occasion right now with the way things are.
And you and I talked about before we started broadcasting again, for everyone, it's kind of forced everyone to think a little bit differently in their respective jobs. And that is possibly a silver lining to come out of this and to use some things that we find during this time that we can apply once things get back to a regular schedule. Coming up on this season in Oklahoma City, what are you looking forward to the most in your role with the team?
Well, that staff, just to be around them and deliver on any of the needs that they might have. I see the role this year being one of, support and service to the gifted staff that we have, the veteran experience that they just are. They're veteran coaches, veteran players. Justin DeFreitas will be in his first year in player development as a coach. But heck, I recruited him many moons ago from junior college, and he was one of the most talented pitchers I'd ever seen, and pitched his way to the big leagues and did it like a man. He took the hard route, solidified himself, and then, extended his career and developed guys along the way, even as a player. So what he and the rest of the staff have to say are things that I'm so curious about. That's probably the most painful part of where we're at right now, is not being able to experience what I had been hoping for. But Travis is a dream for us, and you can see the respect level the players have for him, the patience that he exudes. I've already picked up on that. I'm learning, kind of beat myself up going back in time, going, man, I wish I had some of these skills. So I'm just thankful to see that. Billy and I talk quite a bit. Manny and I the same, and we also have Ben Moore, who's on staff as a development coach. They're doing so much behind the scenes that I just want to find ways to help them. And in the process, I think I'll absorb, what they're all about and learn where it comes from and start seeing why their deliveries are so critical in helping a player achieve.
Well, obviously from that answer, we can tell that you're someone who's always learning, I think, as we all are within this game, and very inquisitive. But as it stands now, how would you describe your coaching style and your greatest asset as a coach?
Oof. Good question. I think my coaching style is I have an enormous amount of respect internally for players. They do things that I can't and could not do.
Right.
So it's not a situation where I have a predetermined visual of what they need to do. I like to learn what those guys are about. And you can learn quite a bit in spring training and over the years, but players evolve and change. So my coaching style was just going to be wide open this year to, the needs and the time and place of where the player is at. I don't care if you've played in the big leagues or you're on your way to playing in the big leagues. If you're struggling statistically or struggling for earning more playing time, the respect level is so high. And I just want to be in a position for a guy to get exactly what he thinks he needs in his preparation and his management of himself, and deliver on that. And that'll go from myself to players and vice versa, but it'll also come from the other staff. So just staying wide open, and I hope it's not too cliche, but it's the truth. Just staying very available and ready to take on whatever tasks. I think the staff would have kind of shaped itself out as we were functioning together. I think everybody's got their areas of skill and expertise, but at the same time, there's going to be those little moments or, in between the line type of topics that will just come up, and just making sure we identify those and we can fill in those blanks as they need to be filled in.
As we mentioned, Mark, you joined the Dodgers organization. Now this will be your fourth season working in the organization after several years working as a college coach, a lot of successful NCAA Division I programs. What kind of was the determining factor for you to transition a little bit for a chance to work in professional baseball and join the Dodgers in their player development side?
Yeah, really good question. It wasn't just going to be professional baseball. What I had been hoping for and had in my mind was to be around people that treated people with heart and soul. And that's what the Dodgers do. There's so much pride in being a Dodger, and the role that you occupy in the organization, it does not determine the level of treatment and respect that you garnish or you give. So this is just a very special place to be. I cannot call it just professional baseball like you and I have talked about in the past, because I'm not so sure it's like that everywhere. And I'm sure there are some college programs that occupy the same value system. But when you combine that with being around the best players in the world who are striving for special things in their lives, and you're standing next to a group of staff members and affiliate staff members that are elite in what they do, it's so motivating. And what you get from being in that environment, you can't do for yourself. And you definitely can't get that from being around people that don't have outlooks that are team oriented and organizational oriented. So I would just classify it as one of the most unselfish places I've ever been. And just if I had a son and he was a professional player, I'd want him to be a Dodger right now in this time and place. So it was a no-brainer. Very lucky though, because it wasn't an easy path.
Well, now, and I say this a little bit in jest, in a sense, for us, this kind of feels like being in extended spring training. How the time, season normally start in early April, but you mentioned before you had managed rookie ball. You certainly had experienced coaching guys in extended spring training. So I've always been a little bit curious, what are those days like in April and May in extended spring training for guys who are younger, getting more experience, but haven't joined a full season team quite yet?
Yeah, there's so many parodies and outlooks on what extended spring training is. First of all, it's somewhere that has to be there. It doesn't mean you as a player have to be there or as a staff member, but it has to exist, because in the years that I've been in extended spring training, 2 years, we had Max Muncy when he first signed. He came to us from the A's, and he was extended for a couple weeks, just getting himself ready to be a Dodger. And he came out to you guys and tore it up, and the rest is history. But even in that year, Walker Buehler, when he was on his development type of progress into being unleashed into the innings eater that he is now, like it was an important place for him to be. And on the flip side of that, when you have young players that are preparing to get out to an affiliate and taking those steps, they're still young or fighting it out. They're getting to see that. When they see a big leaguer or a potential big leaguer take value of that time, you should automatically understand how much that does for the young players that are standing back and watching. So that's available in extended spring training. It's not what people tend to focus on. They tend to focus on, here we go again, it's early mornings. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know many baseball people that like waking up at 4:35 in the morning every day, even after spring training's done. But when you're going to the yard and you know that it's an important day for somebody's progress, there's 1, 2, 3, 10 players on that day that you can connect with and, you know, make an impact with just by getting to work with them. It doesn't even take a lot of words. It's definitely a special thing. And some of my favorite stories from my first extended spring training, when we were all under the tutelage of John Shoemaker, our captain of our minor leagues. I mean, we had Christian Santana, who you guys will see soon. He was there as a little bit older guy. He was potentially frustrated by being in that situation. And just to see him get the support he got from Shu and the rest of the staff and the conversations that we had with him, by the time he went to Ogden, he just went off. He only lasted 40 at-bats. He crushed the ball, hit like 500, and ended up, you know, being a performer in Great Lakes. And he's just performed every way from there. And he was seasoned through the challenges of extended spring training, you know, the perceived challenge.
Well, you just mentioned Christian Santana, but I was going to ask maybe who are some players, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot too much, that you've managed, whether it was in Rancho last year and rookie ball before that we haven't had a chance to see in Oklahoma City quite yet, but within the next year or two we could, and players who excite you.
Yeah, there's quite a few, so I'm not going to be perfect with this. It's going to be just kind of the guys that pop into my head, but somebody last year in their first full season with us that was wire to wire from start to finish of the season with a little injury bout in the middle of it. Devin Mann, infielder out of Louisville. Last year was his first full season. He torched it up in Rancho, very respected by the league. Made himself more versatile by playing both third and second. He can do other things as well, but he just shined for us, and he took such mature quality at bats, and there's leadership in there. Jaron Kendall, somebody you guys are going to see sooner than later, and he's been fighting it out and working on himself, and I'm so proud of him. He's a star, man. He's a superstar, and he's just going through that minor league process, and he did a great job in big league camp this year. Those tools are enormous. You just won't see better tools, but when you chop it up, like, that guy's one of the smartest human beings I've ever been around. And he's got another gear to him that he showcases, and it'll just stand out. It'll bring the crowd to their feet. Those are two guys initially. And then the fun one on the mound right now, there's a bunch of guys, you know, Edwin Uceta, Andre Jackson, Leo Crawford, but Josiah Gray is somebody I'm sure a lot of people read about. And again, like, similar to what Jaron's doing now, which is refining himself and working on himself and his game, Josiah had a little bit different of a process. He was a shortstop in college at a D2 in New York and drafted by, you know, Cincinnati to be a pitcher, which he had done his final year in college as a pitcher only. He had done a little bit of both position and pitcher work prior to that. But this guy is so tough, so educated, constantly finding ways to develop himself, and he is an absolute bulldog on the mound. I think that will be very infectious. And those are just some names. Anybody can ask any other questions about other guys or those guys in particular, but if I'm looking at it from a fan's perspective, like, those guys are somebody that to get excited about right now.
Well, the first two names you mentioned, Devin Mann and Jaron Kendall, the reason, even though I've never seen them play, I can tell you why I know they're going to be good players is because based on where they went to college, that means they were signed by Marty Lamb, who was one of the best scouts in the business. If you look at the guys he signed to the Dodger organization, just stud after stud after stud in that kind of mid-southeast region. I don't know how to exactly describe it. Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, all that stuff. So we were talking about him with Zach Rex in our last Zoom call that we did. So yeah, definitely some names. We thank you for sharing that. Let's get into some of the questions that some of the fans have asked here. And first one coming from John Higgins. When there is a time that a season will start, how long do you think it will take players to be able to get ready?
Yeah, not very long. Definitely not as long as it would take in a spring training, a typical spring training process. Most of those guys this past year for spring training, for big league camp, as an example, if the pitchers and catchers reported on February 10th, you were seeing most all the pitchers and catchers be there at least a week in advance, which, it's a healthy 6 weeks there. And same thing for the position guys. So I don't think it would be that amount of time. I'm speculating, but I think, it would be, a month or less of time to prepare for a season.
Carrie Seaborn asks, what's the difference for you mentally between coaching first base and third base, and do you prefer one over the other?
Good question. It's a big mentality shift, frankly. At first base, I think that your position with the player over there is to prepare them informationally, give them what they want, learn what they need to know, what they want to know, so that you can deliver that information to them. And, it could be a guy making sure that he understands exactly what keys he looks for that you've already identified in that pitcher, if he's looking to steal or get his jump, all the way down to the time on the stopwatch and where the defense is. Some guys they'll just tell you, like, hey, make sure I know these following things. And you deliver for them. Some guys take it to another level, and they want a little bit of arm grade in the outfield, and they'll even talk to you about scenarios like, hey, if we get a slow one here, should I keep my head up and maybe advance to third base? Some guys get real advanced that way. So you learn the guys over time. At third base, you're reading on the fly. You've got that gun to your head, and you're just trying to put the pieces together of where a runner is, where he's at with his legs, who's out there about to throw the baseball, and are we going to score? And that's all got to happen pretty fast. So in the end, you have your own checklist versus delivering it to the player. And you're just going over that checklist and keeping an eye on everything that's going on with who's coming up to bat. And again, where they're at physically. Sometimes that's the thing that fans cannot know. It's you might have a player out there or one of your catchers who happens to be a guy that everybody loves seeing running, but he might be on his 8th game out of 9 days catching behind the dish. And, if the situation doesn't dictate it, it's not maybe the time to press him. So I'll take some of those boos. I get it. But if the fans walk up after the game and say, hey, what happened there? I'll explain myself. It just it's very similar because you're on a baseball field and you are a base coach, but you have to change what you're actually trying to do. Otherwise, you're just trying to talk to a player 120 feet away at first base or holler at them at second. These guys know what they're doing. So you have to be there and help them advance in a safe manner and help them maintain that head of steam that they develop. Because if you're a Dodger base runner, you run pretty hard.
And you packed a lot in that answer. And there was going to be another question I was going to ask from Rodney Johnson, but you basically already answered that. So Rodney, I'm sure you know what question you submitted, and Mark covered pretty much a lot of the ins and outs of coaching on the bases there. Matt Dietrich submitted a question that I'm going to modify a little bit. He was more asking in terms of promotions to the big leagues, but I will modify it in terms of when you're evaluating a player, your previous stops, and of course, it's a collective decision between yourself and other members of player development. How do you know when a guy is ready to advance to the next level of the minor leagues?
That's one of the more challenging things to do. In the case of Oklahoma City, I think that's a big reason why Travis is our manager. It's Travis with his years of experience, his lens on this thing. He's incredible to talk to about these topics. I enjoy just sitting back and listening, and that's one of the daggers in the heart right now too, to not be able to sit in that room and have a seat where Travis is delivering that special message to a player who's going up to the big leagues for the first time or re-earning his way up there. I have not seen that happen, and that's part of being in AAA. But in regards to a player being ready to advance, that's a total team effort. I think that our front office and our roving staffs, they do such a good job of keeping an eye on the entire organization and where all the players are at. When you're at one affiliate like I've been, you're in one place at one time, you're seeing what your guys in that current moment are up to. The other players are our players, they are our guys, but if you're not with them on a daily basis, you can't always see what's going on. So I'll give you an example from last year, like Jeter Downs, who's now with the Red Sox. Jeter was one of the youngest players on our team in Rancho, and it was time to send up an infielder to Tulsa. And, Jeter was in a good place and he was performing, but, you wonder organizationally, like, are we doing the right thing by sending this young player up to the next level to get a taste of it? And there was a lot of dialogue that took place over more than one day. And I love that because it allows for opinions and outlooks to be presented. Everybody believing in the player, everybody believing that person being an option is a good thing. But then just going through the process of making sure we're managing it properly from a player development standpoint. What's best for the player and the organization? Is it the right time for a challenge? In his case, he went up there and he did even better than he did in Rancho. He tore the cover off the ball. And same thing with Connor Wong, who's also with the Red Sox now. But, people can look at it a lot of different ways, and they might judge some of the decisions that the Dodgers make on a positive or negative basis, but there's always more to it behind the scenes. And it's just about it's because you're with that person every day as a player. And if you're in an organizational position where you're overseeing everything, you're understanding the whole scope of it. It's not just always isolated to, hey, that guy hit 5 home runs last week, time to go up. There's a balancing act that takes place too.
Absolutely, and I think that was such a great answer you gave, and a good example I feel from Oklahoma City last year from a guy coming up from AA to give fans a little bit more insight is Keibert Ruiz, who his numbers at Tulsa were okay, but he's got a long-standing relationship with Travis Barbary, and Travis said Keibert needs to be challenged, and some guys need to be challenged to really thrive, and probably had gotten maybe a little bit, I don't want to say bored, but things were becoming maybe a little bit stale there in Tulsa because he had been there for close to 2 full seasons despite having success. So I think that's just another way to illustrate your point of taking in the totality of the situation, having the relationship with those players before you're able to make those decisions. I imagine a lot of those who are joining us today, they have kids who play baseball or softball and unfortunately aren't able to do so in a formal capacity right now. So what kind of things would you suggest to these parents to be able to pass on to their kids and maybe they can work on right now and during these circumstances, whether it's, however much resources they have or don't?
Yeah, great question. I think that the first thing, the social media opportunity that we have right now in our world is you can actually use it to your advantage. And the fun part is if you follow on Instagram, or I think Instagram's probably the best resource right now to follow players, because what they're doing is they're putting up, for the most part, and I think you should start with Dodger players from the big league level all the way down. So many of our young players and our big, workout regimens that they're putting together for themselves, they've just been really fun about it. But it's real. It's what they're doing, whether it's a backyard workout or being in, Colombia, hitting into a small net that you put together with your family off of a tee. to the fun little drills that guys are doing, like Edwin and Matt Beatty, and hitting a bag of beans with a broomstick. There's so many cool things. I watched one of our guys put up a video the other day of building his own mound with his dad, and put all the lumber together, a bunch of old pieces of wood, and did it right, got a piece of turf on top of it, and it's a legit mound. I can only imagine what that does for that player, and in this case his parent, to know that you're taking those steps to develop right now. I think that creates ownership. I think it creates joy, a humble respect for the game, and that's not going to leave anybody right now. So less focus on not being able to play in games and take the car out to the yard on the weekend and do what you normally would do, and more focus on what you can do and finding good quality resources to observe that in. And we just can't sit there and do that for ourselves all the time. So right now I think it's a great time to scour social media, but the right people, not some of the people who are after dollars and cents over it, but more so the people who are just sharing and demonstrating to the fans that they're staying prepared. Those guys, they're doing it the right way.
Another question from a fan that I had highlighted earlier, but I had missed. Another one from Carrie Seaborn. Who's your favorite player growing up?
I had a couple. Mark Grace, sweet swinging lefty, led all of the majors in hits in the 1990s. First baseman that didn't hit a lot of home runs, but could if you wanted to. He just went for hits. And I just love his story. He was a junior college player, like many are, that got drafted late and decided to go to San Diego State, got drafted even later, and ended up getting to the big leagues with the Cubs pretty quickly. And then his teammate, Andre Dawson, the Hawk. I just thought he was super tough and played so hard, and he had every tool you can imagine. So those were the two for me.
So did that mean, even though I knew you grew up in Southern California, does that mean you were primarily a Cubs fan?
As a young kid, yes. I shifted to a 50-50 split after the 88 World Series. And then in the 90s, I was a Dodger fan, but a fan of some Cub players. We didn't have cable, and we hardly watched television growing up, except for 60 Minutes on Sunday nights with my dad. But when I'd get dropped off at my grandma's or my aunt's, they had cable, and it was WGN and all those day games. Cubs didn't even have lights yet. So Harry Carey and, the whole bunch, it was just what was on TV. So that's what got me.
Well, that's the case for a lot of people throughout the country, who eventually became Cubs fans because of that. I know you're a guy who really prides himself on a healthy lifestyle, taking good care of yourself. But do you have are you a Netflix guy? Are you watching anything, binging any shows right now?
Shark Tank.
Okay.
Been a lot of Shark Tank, too much. And I'm a sucker for nature shows. A lot of Nat Geo, river monsters, just, seeing what's out there, Blue Planet, those things.
What's been your favorite idea you've ever seen on Shark Tank?
Ooh, good question. This might apply to, the states that deal with tornadoes from time to time. There was a guy on there that developed a bunk bed it's like a bed that rises up and it turns into a storm shelter underneath. And it was really heavy. So you just push a button in a matter of seconds, the bed elevates, and then you can just go through a man door and shut yourself down, and you'd be safe in even a category 6, which doesn't exist, as I recall it. It's pretty expensive, but I thought it was a great idea, and it took a lot of initiative to build.
Well, as you will learn when you come here to Oklahoma, tornadoes are categorized as EF whatever. It's a category blank is for hurricanes, EF blank is for tornadoes.
Rookie.
And we are getting into that season here in Oklahoma City. One last question that we just got submitted: any new hobbies or activities that you picked up during this quarantine time?
Another really good question. My brother dropped me off safely a ukulele the other day. I've only played it a couple times, and it's hard to get your fingers to where they need to go, but trying to learn the ukulele a little bit. I've never picked up on musical instruments so well, but we'll see. Maybe I'll play a song for you when we get out there, Alex, on the bus or something.
Okay. Well, hey, we had our last guest was Zach Rex, and he said he's getting better at the guitar and trying to pick up the piano as well. So you guys can have a little jam session there. Mark, again, we thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule today and join us. Very insightful. It was insightful for me, so I'm sure it was insightful for all the fans and season ticket holders that were able to join us. And again, thanks to Braum's Dairy Stores for their support of the Dodger Dialogue series. Remember, their fresh markets are still open. There's one by my house that I'm able to go to. So constantly delivering fresh produce, dairy, breads, ice cream, you name it. So Mark, before we sign off, anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, stay safe, keep doing a great job for you and your family, but baseball will be back. And I think for all of us, the more we stay in tune and we stay invested and realize that when we do return, the joy that we're going to experience, it's going to be doubly joyful if, we remain in this type of contact. So I'm just really thankful, Alex, that you and the rest of the front office and ownership are getting creative in this way and connecting us to the fans, because this is what we do. We miss you guys, and we will be back. But in the meantime, we've just got to stick together in our own way. And thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Pleasure was all mine. And again, we thank you for your insight and your candor this afternoon. So we will leave you to get back to the rest of your day and enjoy the scenic views out there in San Diego. So thank you so much, Mark.
Ditto. See you guys.
And that will do it for our Chalk Talk here. Thank you so much for joining us again. Stay safe, and to echo Mark's sentiments, we will be back, and we look forward to seeing everyone at Chickasaw Bricktown Ballpark. Thanks, and have a good night.